We got some juicy NFL rumors to discuss as the idea of the 49ers trading Kyle Shanahan has been floated out there by Mike Florio and others. Welcome into Verts. My name is Harrison Graham. On this channel, we cover the biggest NFL and college football storylines. I give my opinion and analysis on all of the top stories out there. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. We also react to big games, and we got a big one tonight between the Lions and the Packers. We'll have a Thursday Night Football reaction show this evening as well, so another reason to subscribe and join us for that. Here's what Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk had to say. He said, quote, "I feel like Shanahan and the 49ers are getting close to the point where they would benefit mutually from a fresh start," close quote. Now, he started talking about the Bears as a team that should go out and trade for Shanahan, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. The Bears have not been able to identify and choose the right head coach since they fired Lovie Smith. But I do kind of want to focus this video more on just, okay, does this make sense from San Francisco's standpoint? Is this time to turn the page? Is this a situation where maybe this is an Andy Reid Eagles spot where it's, hey, it's been a really nice run, they've been knocking on the doorstep, but maybe they missed their window a little bit, and maybe both sides would benefit from a fresh start. And hey, in this case, you don't have to fire the guy. You could get some draft capital back and then kind of fast track a retooling of the team from that standpoint. So I kind of want to attack this video from that angle. Now, I do just want to get this out of the way. If I'm running the 49ers, I'm not going down this path. Kyle Shanahan, at worst, is a top 10 head coach, and most would say top 5, and you could count me as one of those. The only coaches I would for sure put ahead of him are Andy Reid and I guess Sean McVay, but like Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, I think Kyle Shanahan is in those conversations. I think he's right there as a fringe top 3, top 5 head coach, and even his biggest detractors would still have him inside the top 10. So I don't think this is that good. Or a route I would go. It's not the craziest idea. I do want to say that because the Niners do have some roster issues. They do have some concerns that they have moving forward, and they're going to need to draft well. So maybe getting some picks back and kind of hitting reset does have its perks, but finding the head coach is pretty difficult. Now, I mentioned this earlier. Did the 49ers miss their window? They went to the Super Bowl in 2019 when a lot of their key players were young. Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback. They couldn't seal the deal against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Got back to another NFC Championship game with Jimmy. Got back to a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy last year. Had the Chiefs on the ropes. Lost in overtime. This year they entered the season as Super Bowl favorites, and it's been a disaster. You had the Brandon Ayuk offseason saga. He ends up getting a big contract, snaps his leg, multiple ligaments tear. Trent Williams has missed some time. He's had, they just announced the birth of their stillborn child. Just a horrible story. Charvarius Ward, same deal, lost their 1-year-old child. They've had injuries left and right. Christian McCaffrey's hardly played. He's done for the year. Nick Bosa's been in and out. So it's been a mess from that standpoint. And on top of all that, they've blown some games they should win. Kyle Shanahan probably hasn't had their best year. And so you start thinking moving forward, can they get back to what they were last year? I think that could be tough. You've got teams like Detroit and Green Bay who are ascending heavily. They're not going anywhere with those rosters. What does Brandon Ayuk's season look like next year? Are we sure he's even ready to start the season? If he is, does he look the same? Deebo Samuel kind of looks washed. You're probably going to have to move on from him. Fred Warner's fought through an ankle injury all year. Can he get back to being an elite player next year? Is George Kittle still an elite player a year from now? Does Trent Williams want to play anymore at 36 years old? You got to make a big Brock Purdy decision. So I think they would be a playoff team next year if they came back and mostly healthy, but I think there's a strong argument to be had that they missed their window, at least with a lot of these key core players. Now, could they tweak, retool, and do all that? Sure, but you also have the Purdy decision, which we'll get to here in a little bit. And that brings us to this idea. Could you trade Shanny and kind of do a fast rebuild under a different head coach with John Lynch? Now, again, the idea of finding the coach, which we'll discuss in a sec, that's, you'd have to feel pretty good about that. But I mean, what if you got 2 first-round picks, right? You get a lot of key players back. A couple guys have to go, Debo, a couple other guys. But say you draft a premier offensive lineman, you draft, a premier defensive lineman, and then you have a future first-round pick from said team, whether it's the Bears or someone else. I think a lot of teams would be interested in the future. I understand the thought process of it. I really, really do. I'm not completely dismissing this, even from San Francisco's standpoint. If you're the Bears or another team who can't get the coach right, of course it makes sense. Like, oh, Kyle Shanahan? Yeah, it would hurt to trade some picks, but he brings instant winning and credibility to your team. And like, if you're the Bears, oh, Caleb Williams with Kyle Shanahan? Sounds pretty good. The Jags? Trevor Lawrence with Kyle Shanahan? That sounds pretty good to me. The problem is, if you're San Francisco's, finding a top-tier head coach is difficult. It's hard finding a solid coach. It's really hard finding a coach of Kyle Shanahan's caliber. And I know there's little things teams don't love about Shanahan. His teams aren't built to come from behind. He kind of has to play with a lead. He probably needs to evolve his offensive system a little bit. Okay, fair enough. I've seen this guy go to 2 Super Bowls, one with Jimmy Garoppolo and one with Brock Purdy, another NFC Championship game with Jimmy Garoppolo, another NFC Championship game with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's a nice player. He's not transcendent. He's not elite. He's very good. He's a good quarterback in the NFL. But that brings us to this part of the discussion is the Brock Purdy conundrum. A big reason why they've been awesome the past couple of years, went to a Super Bowl, probably would have gone to another one if Purdy doesn't injure his elbow against Philadelphia a couple of years ago, is he costs no money. And the rest of their roster has been loaded. Well, next year he's in the final year of his rookie contract. Now, you could just play next year out, see how it goes, which is what I would do if I was the Niners. But if you like him enough, even if you get a team-friendly deal a year after next year, at minimum, his contract is starting in the 40s of millions of dollars per year. Like, that's not top-tier QB money. Top-tier QB money now is $55 million per year. Dak just got $60 million per year. I would imagine Purdy's reps push for 50 plus, but even if he did you a solid and you got him for 45 a year or something like that, you're losing some key players. And I think we've seen this year with guys that have gone down, Brock Purdy is not nearly as effective without his star players. Now, most quarterbacks aren't, right? Like, unless you got one of the top 3 or 4, and even like Patrick Mahomes, since they traded Tyreek Hill, hasn't been as explosive. So, like, it's a give and a take there. But I do think Brock Purdy is in the category of very good quarterback, but he needs pieces around him. He can't elevate the entire team. Like, you either have to protect him better or you have to have good weaponry around him. You can't have neither. And with the injuries to Ayuk and Debo falling off and Kittle missing time, their O-line's been suspect and the weapons have not been that good. And you've seen Purdy have a good, but not nearly as good of a year. So you kind of ask yourself, and you get into the situation is, what do you do if you're the 49ers? I think most likely what happens is they try to get these guys healthy and they just run it back for one more year next year. But if they've convinced themselves they've missed their window, I could at least see the Niners listening to calls. What if a team offers you 3 first-round picks? Again, finding the next coach, if you miss, you're going to be viewed as just an idiotic franchise. And this is a team that had Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula before Kyle Shanahan. But John Lynch seems to know what he's doing. And what about this too? What if Kyle Shanahan was like, you know what, I don't really want to rebuild. Like, what if the Niners went to him and were like, hey, we're going to rebuild. And he's like, I don't really want to do that. Maybe it's just one of those mutual things. Again, like Andy Reid and Philly. I don't think the Eagles were like, you suck. I think they were just like, look, man, we went to a Super Bowl. We went to 4 NFC Championship games, whatever it was. We've fallen off the past couple of years. It's probably just best for both sides to turn the page. And now he hasn't been in San Francisco as long as Andy was in Philadelphia, but I think there is some merit to that conversation. Sometimes you need a fresh start to get back to the place you want to go. Andy Reid ends up with Kansas City, has some good years with Alex Smith, gets that thing turned around. Boom, Patrick Mahomes falls into his lap. They win 3 Super Bowls. Could that happen for Shanahan in Chicago or someone else? I'll tell you this. If the Niners floated Kyle Shanahan's name out there, I think several teams would make calls. And I think several teams who have current coaches would consider firing their coach to get in on the sweepstakes. Is this a move Jerry would make? I don't know. I mean, I would think if I'm Jerry, if I could get Shanahan to coach Dak Prescott, he could get more out of him than Mike has, especially the past year and a half. So, it's an interesting thought. Coach trades don't happen a ton. Sean Payton went for a first and a second to Denver. The Broncos also got a third back, but that was a little different. Payton had taken a year off, and the Saints had already hired Dennis Allen. It's not like they were bringing Sean back. So I think you're talking about at least a first and a second for Shanahan. And if I'm the Niners or the Rams for Sean McVay or whoever it is, I'd want at least 2 firsts. It's a new time. Teams are desperate. They want to get this stuff right. Money isn't nearly as big of a factor for these teams as it was 20 years ago when the rare trade for like Bill Parcells or whatever would happen. So listen, GMs, owners, these teams are innovative. They're looking for ways to improve their team, and getting a guy like Kyle Shanahan would certainly improve a lot of football teams. I want to ask you guys down below, will Kyle Shanahan be the 49ers head coach in 2025 next year? Type yes, type no. Let us know in the comments of this episode. And be sure to join us tonight for a little Lions-Packers Thursday night football. Big stakes. If the Packers win, it's truly a 3-team race to win the NFC North. If the Lions win, they would improve to 12-1. The Packer 12-1, 11, 12-1, I believe. The Lions or the Packers would fall to 9-4. Obviously, very safe for a wild card, but 3 games back with 4 weeks to go. Probably not winning the division at that point. And then it would be down to 12-1 Detroit and 10-2 Minnesota, who plays this weekend. So big game tonight in the NFC North in the NFC playoff picture. We'll react to it all here on 4 Verts. My name is Harrison Graham. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you tonight.